coming here to this panel about undergraduate research at national labs and in particular at BNL. And also, thank you to our panelists, including these three professors, for graciously giving their time to come talk to us about the opportunities available to undergraduates. So the way this is going to work is we'll have a 45-minute panel where questions that you submitted on our Google form are going to be asked by Rachel Anderson here to the professors. Then afterwards, we're going to have a short break and then switch to a panel of students who have successfully completed research opportunities at the national labs. So if you have any additional questions, there'll be a chance at the tail end of the panel to raise your hands and ask questions. Or if you want, you can right now still submit questions on the form we've sent around earlier, and we can get to those at the end. So without further ado, could the panelists please introduce yourselves, and then we can get started.
Thank you for being here.
I'm Navid. I'm in accelerator physics. I do laser plasma interactions. A lot of my work is done at Accelerator Test Facility at Brookhaven National Lab.
So I'm Bernauer, working in nuclear physics. My project at BNL mainly is Phoenix, and for the future EIC, where I'm mostly involved in the streaming readout. Other than that, I also work in PSI, the Porsche Institute in Switzerland, for the news experiments, on electron proton scattering, and involved in some experiments at CERN, in Mainz, and now in Vancouver and trials.
Okay, I'm Emilio Mendez. I leave you as an exercise to guess what country I'm coming from. No, it's at the end. It's an extra bonus question. Since I'm the older one, I deserve to tell you a little more about my life, right? Since I'm so old, you guys are just kids for me. Twice as old as these people are. I will use twice as much time, as soon as proportional, to data. So first, my research lab comprises 3 labs. One in a research laboratory at IBM, where I spent 16 years doing research and looking for ways of using quantum mechanics to get better transistors and better lasers. Then, in 1995, I came to study group, professor in the physics department, to continue searching for new ways of making better lasers and better transistors. I look also for the noise properties of those materials. What happened, the fluctuations associated with many physical phenomena. It was from 1995 to 2006. In 2006, I was named the first director of the Center for Functional Nanomaterial, the Nanoscience Center at Brookhaven. I was there the director for 10 years, and then I did such a poor job that they promoted me. And they promoted me to oversee this together with condensed matter physics and with chemistry. So I was the director for 4 years of the energy science department. I came back in 2020. I'm not doing any more research myself, and now I'm focusing on undergraduate education. So right now, I've been assigned to teach 125 and 127. So you're interested in TAing that class, let me know. I need people to help me, people understand what's going on in physics. So if you're interested, let me know. I need to have a recitation instructor at the end of November. So keep this in mind. So my research essentially has been focused on materials, devices, and quantum phenomena. I've been associated with Brookhaven for 16 years, and therefore I can tell you something about what's going on in research at the undergraduate, at the graduate, the scientific level. Primarily on physics, and primarily on condensed matter and material science. That's it. So now your turn.
Thank you so much for being here. We should give a round of applause again. So I'm going to start just by going down the line. Our first question, Professor, Vafaei-Najafabadi.
Just call me Navid.
Okay. Professor Navid, would you describe your research area at Brookhaven and how that's like changed over the years?
I haven't been here long enough for it to change significantly, but yes, I can describe my research area. So we are interested in interaction of laser with ionized media. So all of you are physicists here. Well, the physicists here would know that atoms, neutral atoms, and elements have ions and electrons. So what we're interested in is what happens when you separate ions and electrons so that they can move freely. In that medium of plasma, we can create a situation where there are enormous forces. So the way that we do that is by high power laser. That is a technical way of describing shooting stuff with lasers, which is why I got into this business. So what we study is the physics of laser interaction with the plasma and how that leads to acceleration of electrons, as well as some other instabilities that we're interested in.
Professor Bernauer, what undergraduate research opportunities are there at national labs? And what opportunities are there in your field particularly, or your groups? So basically what the question is asking is how can undergraduate students get involved in your field of research?
So I have to say, I actually don't know that much, so probably you have to answer that question for BNL. I have a lot of undergrads working in my group. Mostly I know them from Physics 335, but that tends to be projects which are more either here in my lab or more software oriented. And it has the advantage that because I'm not that much at BNL, I can actually see the students more often. There are opportunities. So, for example, I didn't have an undergrad working there, but I had a master student working for me at BNL on a hardware project. But for the specifics, I actually have to refer to you on that end.
Okay. So you want me to tell you about those opportunities, or you want to tell me to tell you about nanoscience? Or both?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Right. Because one of the opportunities I do see for undergraduates like you at BNL is working in nanoscience. Nanoscience has two particular interesting elements which are novel. One is the trivial one, which is nanoscience means very small particles. Small particles, we're talking about the order of a few nanometers. To keep in mind, the size of the atom is the order of 0.5 nanometers. Okay? So we're talking about a few nanometers. What does it mean? Well, first of all, being so small can go to many different places. This is why we use in medicine. For instance, this year's Nobel Prize in Chemistry have been given for the discoveries of ways of making nanoparticles, the scale I was talking about, in a very high quality, in very great quantities. Professor Louis Bruce, for instance, from Columbia, was the inventor of the technique, and somebody at MIT was the one who perfected the technique. This is the first property of nanoscience. That is so small that you can use it just to move these particles, maybe in solution or something, at different parts of the body. This is why it's used in medicine. But there's another property, which is also quite simple, which is that you make the particles smaller to smaller, surfaces matter more than the volume. Okay? Basically, the surface goes at the distance squared, and the volume is at the cube squared. So the surface properties of a nanoparticle are much more important in a macroparticle. Because the surface, in relation to volume, is much larger in proportion. What does it mean? That for properties or phenomena that depend on the size, and most important on the surface, this is wonderful. For catalysis, for instance, to do nanocatalysis, because the surface is very large compared to the volume. The third one, which is more interesting to you, physicists, is because at small scales, quantum mechanics start applying. And you are doing properties, for instance, the properties, the color, the light emission properties of those particles depend on the size. Not the chemical component, but the size itself. Okay? And I could elaborate more and more. So nanoscience is an area where you will be most welcome to participate there. There is a particular center called the Center for Functional Nanomaterials. Another aspect is the aspect related with more conventional condensed matter physics, solid-state physics. So we are looking also for properties associated with quantum materials. These days, it's very fashionable to talk about topological materials. Materials whose properties depend a lot on the surface and not so much on the volume. We have plenty of groups working on that. Also with works establishing new techniques. For instance, we are working actively in improving the transmission electron microscopy properties of some of the devices. Then you look at microscopically at the transmission of these particles. This has something to do with conventional solid-state physics. But on the other hand, we're also looking in different fields. The mine is more the field of these two other professors associated with nuclear science and high energy physics. The beautiful facilities associated with, first, synchrotron radiation to study the high energy physics properties of those materials, using X-ray scattering, for instance, but also looking at nuclei, looking at how we can look at the structure of nucleons, essentially by bombarding them with electrons now. Now we're talking about ERIC, associated with electron-ion collider, which is the new generation of accelerators in nuclear. So in condensed matter physics, in, I would say, nuclear physics and high energy physics as well. There's also people working on environmental studies. It's more related to biology and to chemistry, but there are many connections in the physics as well. Now, how these opportunities can be found? There are two programs I'm aware of. One is associated with the National Science Foundation, the RU. This is a research opportunity for undergraduates. Typically, people who are...
It's a summer program.
It's a summer program. There's another one similar to that that is sponsored by the Department of Energy, which is the one that runs the National Laboratories, called SULI. Essentially, is a research opportunity for the summertime for undergraduates. Those programs are very good in the sense that they pay you stipend, they provide housing locally if you need it as you have it, and they are in very high demand. So if you are interested, eventually we can send you information about when to apply. Typically the application period is January or February for the following summer. Aside from these well-established programs, the researchers, either the group leaders, individual researchers, have opportunity for individual undergraduates to work all year round. And some of them, I think that in physics there is a course, there used to be a course, your research opportunities.
There's actually two courses. So it's a 200 series and a 400 series course you can take. You can take them for a total, I think, of 6 credits each. Right?
487 is the one that I usually have.
So, right.
Yeah. So so it's maximum of 3 credits per semester and 6 credits total. So times 2 is 12 credits. And I would say it's highly recommended that you try to find somebody you can do that with, especially if you want to go to grad school. It's a very good thing to have that in your CV. Automatically a good letter writer, because that person knows you then very well and can write a substantial letter if the work works out. Of course, you have to balance this with your academic success and the costs, right? If you are a little bit tight there, right? If your GPA is bad, research will not rescue you, right? But try to find a little bit time for that.
Yeah, SULI program that Emilio mentioned is SULI. That's the Department of Energy funded. The RU program has a little bit of an asterisk on it, in the sense that we don't take our own students for the RU program. The RU program is usually meant for students from other universities that don't have research opportunities to apply to. But the SULI program is a straight out internship at the Department of Energy program, and a lot of my students have pretty good luck with it, so I'm gonna apply.
And maybe a couple of words how to find an advisor, right? Think about who you would like to work with, right? And you know from your courses who you think you have a good connection to, and then just ask them, right? The worst thing is they say no. Right? So for example, I right now would say no because my group is so large that I could not take more and give them work and advise them. But that's only because the group is so large, right? And there are a lot of people who would like, well, would at least think about it, right? They don't think about it if you don't ask them. But if you ask them, they think about it, and that's it.
I would also say don't limit yourself to, because you take a certain number of courses by second year or third year or wherever you want, right? But there are like, physics department has like 70 faculty and astronomy or like, so there's like a large number of professors that you might have never met. So go on the research website, find someone who's doing something interesting, and you can go talk to them.
So in short, you're interested in research within the department, here physically, the grounds of the university. REU is a very good program because, REU, but you have to do it elsewhere, not here. The REU students that we receive are coming from other universities. So you're interested in doing research, let's say, at Columbia, or at Berkeley, or at MIT, you can apply for an REU program elsewhere. You're interested in doing research here, at Blue Haven, for instance, apply for SULI. You can do it locally. And if you're interested in doing research through the academic year, you can do it by contacting a professor, whether here at the university proper, or a researcher at Blue Haven, and then you can get credit for it. So you will not be paid during the academic year, in general, but you will be paid in the summertime for what you do. In contrast, during the semester, you get credit for what you're doing.
Thank you. These are all very good suggestions. So the third question I will pose to everyone. So what sort of theoretical work and mathematics, if any, do you all work with?
So I'm an experimentalist, so I avoid math. No. I mean, certainly, if you do nuclear physics and you want to do more on the calculation side, having an understanding of quantum electrodynamics and what is a Hamiltonian, maybe have seen a Feynman graph, helps. But if I go through what my undergrads have done, or the undergrads in my group, it's not that math heavy. I think the skills you need is programming. That's the first skill you need, right? Doesn't have to be like necessarily C++. Most of the code we use is C++. But if you know Python, that helps. If you know any programming language, that helps because that transfers. But if somebody comes who has never touched a computer, that will be very hard. Right? It will be very hard to find projects where there's no need for computer.
I would say what you should realize is that if you're solving a math research problem, you probably have already gone through several years of graduate education in math that we work on, right? So math research problems are not common for undergrad, but you use math in research, right? So that does happen. But like Johan, a lot of my projects for undergrads, especially during the last several years, because labs and inference and you all see, there have been a lot of software programs, but the students have been, my students have been really good at picking up software. I have a postdoc now who's working on a very fun math problem that we can research, but even the graduate students usually don't get to the math problems until late in their
It's also a reason why it has been very hard to find undergrad research in theory. Because to be able to do actually research in theory, you need so much courses to actually be on a level where you can productively do anything that most professors will not take an undergrad for research in pure theory. It's different maybe in astro, but
even in astro, they tend to be more computational than pure theory.
Also, it depends on what stage you are as an undergraduate student. If you are a sophomore, your mathematics sophistication in general will not be that high. So doing theory as an undergraduate, it will be harder. If you're a junior, or even better, just finished your undergraduate, it's quite likely that some professor will give you a theory problem. But in general, I would say the threshold for experimental physics is lower at the undergraduate level than at the graduate level for obvious reasons, right? So most of you will be looking for experimental research, even though some of you naturally will do some theoretical work, it's very interesting.
Evan actually worked out a really cool math formalism for I've had him work on, but that was mostly actually like he came to my office one day and was like, I tried to do some math and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, you succeeded.
Maybe he's the exception.
He really is. In a lot of years, and Evan has been the only one.
Yeah, it's already a problem to find advisors for first-year graduate students.
Speaking of the kind of people that you work with, so what are some good qualities for students to have if they want to be involved in research at a national lab?
So I would say at BNL, you certainly need to look a way to get there. So for beginners, it's the biggest problem I guess. But otherwise, I would say it's probably not much difference between research at the university or the national lab, except maybe that there are some restrictions on your citizen status. So for example, it's very hard to get certain citizenship people into BNL. So we cannot get any Iranians in.
Yeah, I am a pain in the ass.
Yeah, okay, how did you get in there?
But a lot of paperwork.
But so that's the only. I mean that is actually a problem we had to face sometimes, and it's really annoying. But the rules are not made by us; they were made by DOE, and they went back there.
So let me defend the national laboratory. First of all, it's not so difficult to get there. For many of you, or some of you may have a car. It takes exactly 30 minutes to go there, 15 miles, no, 20 miles to be precise from here. Now, I don't know now, but a few years ago, for many years, there was a shuttle in the morning going from here to there. Not anymore?
Not
Okay,
anymore,
it's
but I'm thinking about restarting this EIC right now. They
No,
also will build a new train station.
no,
Well, it
this,
will take much longer than these people are going to take. Right. So this doesn't help. For instance, when I first became associated with Brookhaven, I didn't have a car, period. Not to come to the university, no car at all. I was walking from home. And I have to go now to Brookhaven every day. I didn't have a car. So before I got a car, I was taking this commuter shuttle every morning at 8:30 from the engineering quad, going there and coming back at 5:15. My wife was very happy because I was coming home very early. So this was happening, but maybe now it doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
it doesn't
It's
matter.
unfortunate. So the first barrier. The second barrier which people say is about paperwork. Well, paperwork basically, I just left my tag in the car. You eventually and essentially get identification card. You have to register, being a visitor there or a permanent visitor. Once you get the card, you're like everybody else. You go there, just check in, and go through the gate. So it's not that hard. Now, you could ask, so what is the difference in research between a national laboratory and a university? Why go to a national laboratory? You could do it in here, right? It's a good point. But let me tell you at least one difference between the two ways of doing research. One is typically in a university, perhaps not so much in high energy physics, but people work with a professor, relatively small group. There is a professor, and there are a number of students and postdocs working with him or with her. The projects are very focused, and they're, I wouldn't say narrow in the scope, but very well focused. Something that an individual professor, an individual group can do it by herself or by herself. On the other hand, in national laboratory, the reason for having a national laboratory is to have teamwork. So you can address large questions, big questions for the long term that require new facilities and new resources is impossible to have at the university. This is why we're talking about the synchrotron. We are talking about IRRIC. We are talking about the OASIS program that tried to answer fundamental questions. What is the origin of superconductivity in high DC materials? What is really what's going on at the nuclear level? So, something difficult to do in an individual group in a university. So you work with other people, with other researchers at the same time. It's not one professor, sometimes it's a team effort that is going on there. It's the main difference. If you're a person who likes to work together with others in a large team, I think it's a good idea to think maybe of a national laboratory. For people who are doing high energy physics, are doing something the same, but they are going to other national laboratories. They're going to Germany, they're going to Japan, they're going to Gameng, and so on. So those require large facilities, large teams, looking at very fundamental, long-term questions.
I would say that especially places like BNL are also very good at having these connections between different groups. Like, for example, there's CSI, that's a computer science institute, which has a lot of projects in computer science, but also tries to help nuclear physics, and I don't know, probably you too, in doing machine learning applications. So for example, if you're interested in that, I could imagine that people could create a project which is physics related here or at BNL, working with people from CSI at BNL. And that could be also not like based at BNL, right? That could be essentially work from home, because it's computers, right? Log in on a BNL cluster from home, no problem.
One area I forgot to mention is the quantum business, beyond the real quantum mechanics, quantum communications. This is a very strong connection between Brookhaven and Stony Brook in that regard. Actually, there are a couple of professors who are joint appointment. One of them is Helen Figueroa, between Brookhaven and Stony Brook. And they are basically doing projects, actually sometimes they're sending communication from one to the other. They're doing quantum entanglement, quantum sensors, and so on. It's a very important area, very new, full of future, and something that many institutes are interested in. So this is something that can be done either here or at Brookhaven. Brookhaven, there is a large contingent of people working on that. Quantum sensors, quantum entanglement, quantum communications in general.
It sounds like there's a lot of interlapping between the different Stony Brook and also the national labs. That's very interesting. So how did you all end up at Brookhaven, and how did that lead you to the work that you're doing?
Well, part of the reason that I came here was because of Brookhaven. I was interested on laser-based accelerator projects, and Brookhaven had just an area in their accelerator test facility that was about to grow. So I really came here to collaborate with Vladimir Litvinenko, who's more expert on conventional accelerators, and I was a plasma physicist, so that was really part of why I came here. And then the connection was very natural, and I became joint appointment, I think, 2 or 3 years into the time that I was here.
So my position, well, used to be until last September, I guess, or this September.
During the weekend, no?
Yeah, I used to be. It's just ended now. I was a joint position with the RECON BNL Research Center.
What is RECON? Maybe
So RECON is essentially the funding agency system in Japan, right? And they have a research center at BNL. Was originally focused for Phoenix, and now as Phoenix, and hopefully soon go to EIC. I think they have now decided to essentially start a new collaboration on that and make it a new research center. And they used to have, well, they had for a lot of joint positions. So for 5 years, RECON would pay half of the salary for a professor to Stony Brook or to a different university, and they would spend half their time at that home institute and half their time at BNL working on projects. They would also get half teaching duties off. So, for example, I only had to teach like 1 semester per year. Right? So that's really nice. Because it takes a lot of time away from research. So that's how I went to that, I would say.
In my case, as I told you, I went to Brookhaven for management reasons. I had some management experience at IBM. I had some management experience here at the university, and they thought I could be good in doing this kind of things at Brookhaven. But let me turn the question around. And I said many times when I've been giving talks, telling people about national laboratories, I would say, if I were now an assistant professor who came to Stony Brook, I would have a very small laboratory here in Stony Brook proper, in the building. I have my own laboratory, but I have a small laboratory. And I will use most of the facilities at Brookhaven. because it's a bargain. I'm using techniques to deposit materials, layers of these semiconductors. I'm using electron beam lithography to make nanostructure. I'm using evaporator to evaporate gold and other compounds. I'm using low temperature physics, helium, which is very expensive, to characterize those materials. Everything is provided free of charge. There, I have nothing to worry about. Not only that, it's only they will train my students. And not only that, I don't have to maintain anything. So it's a bargain. It's a bargain. Of course, I tell this to the directors of the physics department. I said, don't give such a high startup money to assistant professor.
It's your fault.
It's my fault. So I'm a spoiler. Because then you go to the national laboratory, you get it for free. Okay, so this is why they hate me so much. The physics department.
So what type of opportunities are opened by having research experiences at a national lab? So for example, what kind of job opportunities, what's the best way to make use of these opportunities in an undergraduate's future?
So we are very strongly biased, because when we train you in research, we are basically training you for our jobs, right? We're training you to become scientists. So when I train a student in research, what I'm thinking about is this person is going to apply to graduate school. So for that, having a research opportunity is really helpful because it comes with two things. First thing it comes with is skills that you can write about in your statements. Each of you, when you apply for graduate school, you will write a statement where you tell people why it's a good thing for you and the university for you to go to graduate school. So you have skills that you can talk about and possibly papers, but papers are not required. It's rare in my experience for undergraduate students to come up with papers, so don't sweat that too much. But you definitely can talk about your skills. And then the second thing is that your mentors can talk about how wonderful it is for the university to have you as a student, right? So the recommendation letters play a major role, and they can even sometimes play some role to offset mediocre grades, not bad grades. Like if you have bad grades, then that would be very difficult. But if you have mediocre grades, there's a balance that graduate committees usually consider in getting someone who might not be doing super well in classes for some reason, but is a really great, let's say, hands-on experimentalist or whatever the case may be. Now, in terms of job opportunities, I can only, I don't know, I haven't had an honest job, so all I can say is that it would help if you're going into a similar industry, possibly a recommendation.
Yeah, on that is this recommendation that I think it's even more strong if you would, let's say, apply for storybook programs. Right? If you work with somebody and that worked well, that somebody has some influence on who gets accepted. Like if they say to the commission, hey, that person, yes, the grades maybe is weak, but I've seen them work in the lab and that's great, and I want to continue working with them and I will pay for them. Right? If you find somebody who will pay for your year, right? We don't use up a line, so that's a free offer we essentially give, right? So you have no problem giving that offer. So that's a really big advantage.
Yeah, for those of you who can't follow that, the physics department supports you for the first year, so that's what Jan's talking about.
That's what will be a TA, right, normally. And if you don't have to plan that in, because somebody else will pay for you anyway. But the other thing, at least in my field, what we do is data analysis. So it's essentially big data, right? And in any job where this is important, right, you can say, hey, I've experienced with this, I've used some of these tools, right, I've done that, I know how it is to go through a terabyte, but that's certainly something we provide on there that really serves these kind of jobs.
Let me add a different angle. I think the main advantage of doing research as an undergraduate at the National Laboratory is to discover that there is a world outside academia. When I was an undergraduate student, what I wanted to do basically become like my professor. I admire so much a professor in theoretical physics, I want to be like this guy. So I didn't do any experiments. I only did theory. I realized there is a world outside theoretical physics. And then I realized there is a world outside academia. You don't have to become a professor to be successful in life. You don't have to have a full career in physics to be successful in life. And a national laboratory as an undergraduate opens you the eyes to see other opportunities. Of course, for research, but also for supporting research, for instrumentation as well. So you may be interested in continuing to graduate school, but maybe not. Maybe you'll be interested in doing a master in instrumentation that will be here in the physics department. It will be a good training ground to see what opportunities are. And in fact, I have coached a number of students, and mentored a number of students who did a master in instrumentation here in Stony Brook proper, and then landed a wonderful job as an engineer, if you will, not as a scientist, independent scientist, as an engineer in RIC, for instance. So open the eyes, if you will, to other opportunities outside the academic world. Not that academic work is not important. I'm here, after all, as part of an academician. But there are other opportunities that you can explore, in addition to learning new skills like data science, instrumentation, and so on. So it broadens your horizon enormously, and just around the corner.
And can be also quite a lot of fun, right? Doing research.
Well, by definition, we are here because we are here.
Yes, but that's actually my point, right? And if you notice that it doesn't bring you fun, right, then maybe it's a decision for you, or a decision helpful for you, whether this is actually the right thing for doing in life, right? You don't want to pick up that job and then be miserable for the rest of your life, right? Maybe something else is better for you, right?
Yeah, it allows you to see whether you are going to have fun doing research or not.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Because there is a lot
Because
of
it's actually
pain.
quite miserable.
There's a lot of pain as well.
Yeah.
That's very insightful. So what are some difficulties for undergraduates getting involved in research at a national lab or at Stony Brook, and how can undergraduates overcome these challenges?
I don't know, but my guess is that the biggest difficulty students have is probably finding a mentor and maybe getting discouraged in that process. And the way that you succeed is by not giving up. There are a variety of reasons that somebody may not want to work for an undergraduate student, but you just keep going and going. There are a variety of ways. If you have a good connection, with the faculty, they might not have the position, but they might be able to connect you to other people. The other obstacle, aside from the car, is probably funding. And for that, you sort of need to be aware of the funding opportunity. The study was mentioned that's the one at BNL, the RU at our university. Our university has the program. But I think finding an advisor is probably hard, and I wish you luck.
Yeah, we don't scale that much, right?
Yeah, we don't have, that's one of the things as a faculty, we're aware of and we're trying to work on, is that we don't have a formalized process for getting students who are coming up as undergraduates, rising seniors or senior students to get connected with the faculty for research. We're thinking of ideas, so if you guys can think of something.
The next problem is maybe the time management. Right? If it's research not in the summer where it's the only thing you do for these weeks, if you have to align that with classes and everything, right? As I said, I think at that moment classes are more important than tell your advisor, hey, I have a midterm in 2 weeks, I have to study, and if they are worth their salt, they should say, okay, focus on your study for that 2 weeks, and then you come back and you do more research after that.
So for that, I have a controversial advice, which is to start doing research during the summer, because the summer allows you the time to build up the muscle, so that interruptions during the semester are not fatal. If you just start to pick up something during the semester as you're trying to study for some very difficult courses, then if you leave that for a week and come back to it, you may not remember what was going on, right? But summer will actually give you time to build up the muscles that then you can rely on for the rest of the semester. I have had several students who have tried to start doing research during the semester, and they they have not worked out well. But the students who started doing research during the summer and continued throughout the semester, those students have been very productive.
Yeah, generally, at least in my field, a lot of the projects have a pretty steep run-up curve,
Yes.
right? Learning curve in the beginning, right? A lot of software you have to get installed first, right? And there's a lot of lines of code, and getting orientation and what you actually have to touch and what is just there and you accept it, right? It takes some learning. So it's good if you can work on that, not like once a month, but really every day, so that you don't lose that momentum in the beginning. And after that, it's a lot easier.
I completely agree that my strong advice is that you start doing research in the summertime. First of all, because you don't have the courses to take care of. Second, because you can focus more, and learning those techniques takes a while. Whether experimental, whether software, it takes a while. So you need a continuous focused effort, the 2 or 3 months will do. But at the same time, trying to answer your question, what are the obstacles that undergraduate could probably or possibly find in trying to do research? I would bring something different. I would say one of the main obstacles, if I were an undergraduate now, I would find myself in is having the impression, having the feeling that I'm not ready for research yet. So I'm just learning. I'm learning that mechanics. I'm learning quantum mechanics. I'm going to just do something which is meaningful, original research. It was my main roadblock even when I was a graduate student, let alone an undergraduate student. And I would say, you can do it. You can do it, of course, the kind of project that you are going to do, it will be relatively simple, some repetition involved, so you learn, but it will be rewarding, and you will be ready for those type of projects. You're not going to be ready to solve the unification of the theories of quantum mechanics, electromagnetism, and strong and weak forces, right? You will not be able to do this. It's fine. Eventually you will, but not yet. You start with the simple stuff, but you will be able to do it. And finally, I would say, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to test once more, yes, in the summer, and at most or at worst, you're going to waste the summer to realize that research is not for you, or maybe it's really for you. The same way you can hear, you're thinking of doing microbiology. Very quickly you realize that microbiology was not your real taste. Your real taste was physics, or they were wrong. It's a way of trying something. The cost is low, you have been paid, you may have some fun, and you will decide if you like that approach to life or not. It's a good opportunity again to test, and the price that you have to pay is relatively low. And hopefully the reward will be long-term as well.
But there are two downsides of starting this summer. I in principle agree, but there are two downsides. One is it might be harder to find an advisor. So if I look at my 5 years, the summer I typically travel for research for meantimes, right? So it's a lot harder to take on a new undergrad because you're not there to advise them. Right? Doing that all remotely is not very. The second thing, I probably would not start as an undergrad I don't know and start on a paid basis.
You
Right.
lend money. You don't want to pay, you lend him money. If he doesn't work, you get the money back.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's one way. So it can be that I would say, okay, the first semester you work for free, and then in the next summer you work. When you start in the semester, you get credits right away. Right? Because the credits I don't have to give on my grant. Right? These are considerations. Another idea you might try, if you say, okay, I don't know if that's the right thing for me, if that's the right group, you could ask people if you could just join the group meeting, right? So we have a lot of group meetings from the different experiments. Many of them are online, right? And I personally would have no problem saying, sure, this is the Zoom link, just dial in. And then if you decide to actually do research in that field, you already know the people involved in that group, right? You have an idea what the physics is about, right? You hear words which you already have heard, right? And you know, oh, if they say this name, that's this detector, because you've seen it before, right? So it eases a little bit by getting into it. You only have to do starting the actual work instead of learning what this is about and the actual work.
all very encouraging. We have a lot of freshmen in this room, and a lot of them are probably wondering if it's possible to get into research as a freshman and what kind of qualities you're looking for.
Freshman is first semester. Right?
First semester, first year.
Yeah, in Germany, we just count like
Year one.
yeah, 1, 2, 3, next. Freshman is probably hard.
There are some groups that that can support a lot of students, including freshmen. LTC usually works with a lot of people that are, you know, around the whole gamut actually, from like high school all the way to seniors. Tom Hammock in nuclear physics, he works with a lot of freshmen. The thing about being freshman is that it makes it a little bit harder for your advisor, because we can't just throw a freshman, you know, to the deep end, right? You have to like break down the project to a level where a freshman can do it. But it can be done. I know people do it.
I think hardware projects are probably easier.
Hardware projects are easier.
It would be, oh yeah, you have to assemble these 100 detectors. I show you how it's done, and then you do the other 99, right? Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, people coming to undergrad with a lot of coding experience, so that those things are by themselves are valuable. To, you know, you might be bored, but you know, it can get you to clean up a library of code that someone else has written. But you know, that level of project.
Yeah. Or again, just like dial in and listen what the groups are talking about, right? And then you get this experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things to get into research is that you have to get over the initial shock of people talking about a different language. There's just like no idea what's going on, right? And then this helps with that a lot.
Yeah. Just seeing how people interact, like in groups, like in international research groups.
Yeah.
Like, do they all say, professor, I don't know, I mean, yeah, normally all of first name basis. So.
No, I have to be only considered myself.
Yeah, for you, yeah.
I would say that the hardest part, if you are a freshman, is to find a project suitable for you. There are projects, but they are harder to find with the level of experience and expertise and skills is to be lower, obviously, right? The more you progress in your studies, the easier it is to find those projects. But projects do exist. Actually, we have seen a number of high school students who have been doing projects in the summertime here, and they've been able to do it quite well. So I think it's possible, but again, it's harder to find the right project. But if you find the right mentor who is really inclined to helping undergraduate students, in that regard, Professor Metcalf, that you may have heard or have taken classes with, is wonderful in that regard. He finds projects for everybody. Even if you are an infant, you will find a project for undergraduates. Okay? But in the national laboratory, you can find it. It's true that when they go through the selection process in the SULI application, they give some preference, if you will, to people who are at the junior, perhaps sophomore. I've seen, but not many undergraduates who are freshmen, who just finished their freshman year, making presentations at the end of the student program. But there are. So you're really determined, you're really ambitious, you're really eager and interested, they will find a program for you. They will find a project for you.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I would say if you are a junior student, you should be more focused on finding a project, because you have reached a level of skill where you could actually make significant progress in a number of projects. And if you're a freshman or sophomore, there are projects, but I especially want to encourage my junior students to look for.
If you're a freshman, you have to be more flexible,
Yes.
less demanding of what you can get for your project in the summer.
And you know less professors, and the professors don't know you as well, right?
Correct.
So it's just very hard to jump over that.
That's very informative. So we're gonna wrap up our time very soon. We wanted to end in like just a few minutes, so I'll pose one final question to you all. What other topics outside of your main field would you expect students to learn while doing research in your labs?
Topics or areas.
Yeah, just maybe like soft skills, like what kind of things would you learn outside of the rigorous academia that you're doing in your field?
Brianna knows how to do rock climbing. That has started. Are you asking more in terms of hobbies or more in terms of other fields of study, like
Yeah,
literature or
maybe
something?
how is it maybe interdisciplinary? What other skills can you gain, like maybe time management, or you've talked about that already?
Those are really important, but one thing that I would say is as a scientist and not just somebody who's doing research, it is really important to be connected to the adjacent areas of science. Like I am in plasma physics and accelerator physics, but it's important for me to know what the nuclear physicists are up to, what's going on in the field of high energy physics, because there are opportunities that arise if you're listening, right? So so as an undergrad, I would say know what are the important problems in physics are that people are trying to solve. Emilio mentioned quantum information science, which is an emerging area. There are some other areas that are emerging. You should basically be able to know what are the big problems in different areas of science that people are working on. Not necessarily to the minutest details, but everybody here who's in physics should know something about Higgs boson and that there's a CERN that's working on it, and they should know about the EIC. Just the big ideas that are coming out. That I would say, aside from your specific area of focus, is probably what would be good to know.
Yeah, I think you're very right on that. And I would say also what you learn is to see that university is not necessarily a school, right? So it breaks down a little bit of the border between professor and student, right? If you work in a group, and it's a little bit more compact, and maybe it's easier for you to ask questions now, right? Which I think is a big problem, that people have problems asking questions, right? But getting over yourself to ask the question. That's one thing. The other thing you learn is that not every question has an answer, right? In school, when you ask a question, right, you know when the teacher asks a question that the teacher knows the answer. And in research, that's not true, right? We ask questions where we don't know whether there is an answer. I want to illustrate this a little bit. In Germany, we go to school, and university is not school. So nobody would say, I go to this university to school. Right? School ends before that. University is something new. And I think that's a very good mental model. Right? So especially for the freshman, you're out of school now. This university is different. It's more on you, right? And there are more questions which don't have answers. And it's not this, you have a strict thing to do and it's all prepared. It's more on you to get out what you need to get out of your education.
Come to physics colloquiums. Yeah, think about it. Those are actually really good for introducing you to like the breadth of physics problems that people are working on.
Yeah, it's also good to learn how to make good talks and bad
Yes.
talks. Right? Try to remember, could you follow it? So a colloquium talk should be written so that an early graduate students understands it. So that means that undergrads at least have a chance to understand. If you have an impression that in that talk you understood nothing, this was a bad talk. And remember why. Because that helps you in the future to write good talks.
It's a very high bar. I would be happy now if the physics colloquium was such that other professors would be able to understand. By going about learning new skills, certainly going to other branches of physics is important. But you don't know you are going to end up being a physics professional or not. So I would suggest that take a course in applied science, in applied physics, or applied math. Certainly take something on machine learning. Everybody has to use machine learning. I'm too old to learn those things, but you will be able to teach me, hopefully. Another important thing which he alluded to is take classes, get skills on communicating science. Extremely, extremely important. we do such a poor job as scientists in communicating to others, in communicating to the public the main questions. When my daughter asked me, Daddy, what are you doing in the laboratory every day? I mean, I start talking about long things and I don't understand a word. So you have to explain things in such a way that your 15-year-old daughter or son knows what you are doing. There is a wonderful school here, a wonderful program called the ALDA Communication Science Program that teaches us how to do such a thing. I strongly encourage you to do this. This is a skill that whether you do science or not, it will be useful, helpful for the rest of your life. Learn how to communicate in simple terms and engaging terms, whether it's science or something else.
All right, thank you for all of your responses. It's very helpful. We really appreciate it. So, round of applause.
Let me say something. I'm really, really impressed by the number of people I face here. On a Thursday, 7 o'clock, nothing better to do. Oh, you might be physics students. Thank you very much.
Thanks to the professors for coming by. And right now, we're going to have a short break and then a chance for our student panelists to answer some questions. And you can hear the student experience and the more nitty-gritty of what it's like doing research as an undergraduate. We also have some QR codes for attendance.
And I did Suli at Oregon National Lab last summer.
Hello, my name is Nathan Jackson. I'm a senior dual majoring in math and physics, probably going to study formal theory in grad school. And I did research through Suli at Vafaei National Lab last summer.
I'm Will Daniels. I'm a senior physics and applied math student. In spring and summer of 2019, I was a CCI intern at Vafaei-Najafabadi.
Hi, I'm Gameng. I'm an applied math and pure math major. I entered at Suli this summer.
Thank you very much for being here. So I'm just going to pose questions to all of you, kind of like the professor talks, but like more chill. So why did you guys all decide to do research at Brookhaven? Or a national lab that is not Brookhaven?
I specifically didn't do Brookhaven because it was close. Because if you go to like high schools in this area, that sometimes they'll be like, oh, let's go on a field trip to Brookhaven. So I'm like, I've kind of seen Brookhaven and it has what it has to offer. So I'm like, all right, let me go fully somewhere else. So I didn't stay local at all for that reason.
Yeah. So in my case, it was mainly the project that I would be working on. When I was deciding earlier this calendar year which research program I would be doing over the summer, I ended up basically having to pick between two offers. And I went with Suli. One of the reasons, so it was mostly the thing that appealed to me more about the Suli offer was that in Suli it seemed like to me I would have the opportunity to like begin a project from beginning and see it through to the end and write a paper. Whereas with Eureka, it would more be just doing some computations, with not really the opportunity to see the end point of that. So that was the main reason. Aside from that, I wanted to be able to live where I was doing research. The idea of doing something virtually didn't really appeal to me, and Eureka makes you pay for your housing. And so, Brookhaven, and so I lived 51 miles away from Brookhaven National Lab. If you live more than 50 miles away, then they'll pay for your housing.
So I said when I introduced myself, I did CCI. That stands for Community College Internships, which means yes, I went to community college. Now I went to Suffolk. You don't really have, research labs at Suffolk, so you have to outsource. And I thought that the EIC was a very interesting project to try to get in. So that's why I targeted my application at Brookhaven.
I decided to do Suli because I've lived in the area for a while, and I had a lot of friends that had either parents who worked at BNL or they've had internships in the past, and I was just interested in getting research experience at a national lab, really, because I didn't really wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Wasn't sure if research was for me. But through Suli, I was able to learn more about research and if it was for me.
That's very interesting. So if you did choose your project, how did you do so? Like, what was the process of finding an advisor and going through with that research?
I actually joined into a project that was already started for about a year, so I kind of got like thrown into the water at the start of the middle of a project. So I didn't really choose it, but my advisor did choose me based on similar skill set as the project. So I didn't really choose that, but you guys.
Yeah, I didn't choose my advisor. I submitted my application. My application went to a pool, and my advisor chose me. If I declined my offer, I would not get a second one,
Right.
so I accepted it. That's how I chose my advisor.
Suli does the same thing actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured as much. Yes, in the same experience.
Yeah, when applying, I'll be a bit more specific. When you're applying for Suli, then they'll give you, then they'll let you list your interests. Like you can pick theory or experiment or whatnot, and then you can also write about them in your personal statement. After that, you submit it, and they probably, I don't know how the exact decision works, but they'll pick out some project and give you an offer based on that.
So that does remind me. The content of your personal statement need not be exclusively how smart you are, right? Because your mentor is going to be spending a lot of time with you.
That's good advice. How much experience about your research project did you have prior to starting your research and applying for it?
So I'll start. I had pretty much no experience directly in the field. My project had to do with tomography and computer vision, so machine learning, and I didn't have any experience directly in either of those at all beforehand. But I did have a lot of applied math background and a little bit of computer science background, so I guess I seemed like I would be a good candidate for it. I also had a recommendation from a Eureka advisor, so having previous research experience obviously helps in your application. But in the end, I'd say if you demonstrate interest and the right skills, even if maybe the project isn't directly what you've done in the past, I don't think it's a problem. It's a learning experience, really.
I had two distinct projects because I did two appointments. The first project was very much an engineering project, right? These the accelerating cavities of Brookhaven are sensitive to surface contaminants. So my project was to design a high pressure rinse system that was corrosion resistant and did not produce its own particulates. And because 2019 was a bad summer, everything was virtual, so everything I was doing was on the computer. I already had a lot of experience using a piece of software called Autodesk Inventor. I suspect that was strongly related to why my mentor Zach chose me. So for that first project, I was very much applying and improving upon skills I already had. On the second project, I was doing, this one was a little less organized, I think he ran out of things for me to do. But I was working on cavity tuning computations, which is a lot of, well, not a lot of it, it's exactly coupled oscillators, which is not a problem I had been exposed to before. So, remember I was a sophomore at the time, so him teaching me some math is not quite a question.
Yeah, so in my case, I was pretty lucky in this case that my projects basically involved the techniques using something called infinite series expansions, which you learn about in, I think the course is MAT 3041. It involves Python programming and it involved Fortran programming. And I had taken classes on all of those things. And so I think that I was pretty well prepared going into the project. That being said, there was still quite a lot of, I still learned quite a bit. I still became a lot better at each of those things. And so it wasn't, I would never say that I didn't, even, and getting to apply them, of course, is different from just learning in the classroom. So it was still, I still picked up a lot.
Yeah, I went into it knowing very, very little about my project actually. My project was fully on optimizing chemical, engineering stuff. And I am from applied math, so I didn't know any of the chemical aspect at all. but the project was formulated as a thing called a mixed integer nonlinear program, which each one of those acronyms stands for like a higher degree of hardness to the problem. The only part I learned about in class was the LP, the linear programming at the end. So I knew like the tiny little bit of what the project would be, but yeah, learn quick. I mean, research is the best teacher there is in a sense, because you're learning exactly what you need to do. So you get there, I mean, you do.
So it sounds like you guys all had varying levels of understanding of your field before you went in, so it's very interesting. What was the most valuable thing that each of you learned at your research?
For me, it was definitely the machine learning. I mean, machine learning is incredibly relevant to pretty much any field you want to go into. It's a good skill in research and industry, basically anywhere. Before I did the program, I wasn't even that interested in machine learning, but after it, I learned a lot about machine learning and its applications. So that, as far as hard skills go, that'll be it. And then another definitely important skill is just general communication and just being able to speak about a problem that, you know, not everyone's going to understand the technicals of what you're doing, but a big part of a program is being able to explain to people that aren't technically informed on the topic and basically put it down at a level that anyone can understand, which is a valuable soft skill.
Oh, we going down ladder now?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just
You can go anywhere you like. Someone else to jump in.
I did say I was already familiar with the software inventor before starting, but I definitely had to get better at it to conform to the standards that you need to produce your work for something like this. I guess that was probably the most instructive thing I got, because, you know, a couple oscillators was like the second thing I learned this semester after finishing my program.
In my case, it's hard to pick out just one thing. I got a lot better. I mentioned that I already had some exposure to most of the skills that I learned at my research appointment, that I needed for my research appointments, but I got a lot better at each of them. Aside from that, I learned how actual theoretical physics research is done. And finally, I learned a lot, even though most of my time was spent doing the research itself. I learned a lot about the best ways to make a present, about the best ways to present and to talk about your research.
That's very fair. Yeah, talking about research was definitely a big factor of what you learned. I ended up having to do, just like our specific group, they liked for me to have like weekly presentations. So I did the SULI, but then I continued afterwards as a research aide. So every week for like the last year I've been doing like hour-long presentations. So it's a lot, but you get very good at presentations now, and making PowerPoints is essentially a joke. So that takes out the hard factor of making presentations and speeches. So that's definitely one huge aspect that came out of it. The other aspect was actually kind of unintentional that I learned, is that even my master's degree is in operations research, optimizing stuff. I learned that what the actual day-to-day of what an operations research person would be doing. And I said, I don't really want to be doing this, I think. So this is a great thing to know, that I like the skills, but I don't want to be doing this full time. So not knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable as knowing what you do want to do, which is fine. But
That's good advice. So speaking of what you want to do and what you don't want to do, how did you decide you wanted to pursue research, and will you be continuing this research to pursue a PhD?
Okay, so technically my BNL project that I did in the summer, I'm still technically doing. I'm going to continue it. I'm interested in it, but will I do a PhD specifically in computer vision or what I was doing? Probably not, but I am considering doing a PhD in machine learning, or maybe operations research with machine learning applications to it, things like that. So I'd say that it contributes towards skills that will definitely be used in the future for me. It didn't directly inform what I'll be doing a PhD on, but I still think it's valuable. Once again, as it's important to know what you're not going to do as much as it is what you're going to do. So.
I think that's skills that were useful right I do research for one of our previous panelists. I do research for Jan. Turns out he uses Inventor a lot, but I'm not going to get a PhD in Inventor.
Yeah. In my case, the research I did over the summer I found quite interesting and made me think that I want to do research as a career. I'm seriously considering doing a doctorate in particle physics, albeit probably not on the exact project that I worked on at Silly. I am continuing that research though. I haven't been able to make much progress because both of my advisors are in the process of moving to do postdocs in Williamsburg, Virginia, and Regensburg, Germany. But it is something that I plan on continuing. Yes.
So it's actually funny. It seems that I think at least 3 of us have, since you do your like little internship, you get the opportunity to extend the internships and keep them going as research aids, or just even continuing the research as that. So it gives you longer experience on what you want to do. But yeah, I very much realize I like the environment of the research, but just not a particular aspect of the research, which was good to know. But.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people who are going to be interested in applying for things like the SULI program coming up really soon. So what are some of the qualifications you need to apply to undergraduate research?
Minimum GPA requirement, United States citizenship. I can pull up the website if you like.
Do you mean like what you want to have for an application?
Yeah, like what looks good, things that would be beneficial in your application, things like classes that might be beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. So your GPA matters, of course, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. In the end, if you have research program, that's the best thing to have, but of course, SULI is one of those programs where you want to get that research so that when you're applying for PhDs later, you have undergraduate research experience so you can get in. And the big thing in academia in general, or gaining research positions, is having basically good letters of recommendation and a good personal statement to show why you want to research and why you'd be a good researcher, basically why you'd be interested. So I'd say the most important qualities to have are really just take classes you like in areas you like, talk to professors, and just try to keep up to date with basically that field so that you know what you would like to do, and just basically so that the people reading your application know that you would be interested.
One thing that I think is important is not just to construct your application in this like hyper-optimized way to appear as if you are the one single student that could possibly fulfill this role. Right? Because first of all, that's probably not true, and I know that. But also because, right, so I mentioned before I did a CCI. That's intended as technician training, but I don't want to be a technician, I want to be a scientist. I wrote about that in my application. A mentor selected my application that could fulfill that want. That was a good relationship. And I don't think that writing about how you're absolutely certain you want a PhD in nuclear physics so that way you can get on an EIC project is the right way to go about it. I think say, maybe I'm interested in nuclear physics and I think working on the EIC would be a good experience for this reason. Right? Not, I'm absolutely certain I'm going to be a nuclear physicist and I already know all these nuclear physics things.
I think that's really good advice. Aside from that, I think that what the professors we had on here before said about programming languages is really important. I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure exactly how the selection process works, but I don't think it's a coincidence that I had experience in both of the languages that I had to use in my project, especially Fortran, since that's, there's a lot of people who don't really appreciate the fact that we learn it here, but it is used an enormous amount in high energy physics. It's, if you go, especially in terms of computation, you literally can't get faster, and so.
Yeah, that's very fair. Actually, funny enough, I could talk very briefly about how the selection process works, just because I've been on the email chains long enough that I keep getting these emails. which is probably not what I should be getting, but, so when the SULI thing opens, they send out a, email to all scientists and say basically like, if you have the funding and if you want a student, you're gonna at this stage gonna get a pool of students that you can look through their resumes, their skills, and everything else. And if they like you, or if they think that you could be helpful for their project, then they'll reach out to like the EDU team and they'll say that we want to take this student, or please reach out to them and see what is what. So it's basically that they have a list of like resumes that they go through pretty much. So it's definitely not an accident that they found your skills. Like, but kind of as like what's important for your application. I think there's two important factors of good researcher. There's of course the skills, there's the programming, there's the key terms in your application, all that stuff that you actually know what you're doing. But then there's the other side of passion. So even if as a freshman maybe you don't have all the skills, you have the passion, that makes up for the skills end. But they look for both of those in the applications, and it becomes very apparent in what you do if you have passion as long with skills, or one is higher than the other. But those are two very important things to kind of plug in better.
That's good advice. So we only have like a few more minutes, so I'm gonna open up the floor and ask the audience if they want to ask any questions themselves. If nobody wants to ask questions, I can keep asking these ones, but feel free.
Okay. It's like a slight question about, did y'all like apply to like multiple programs when looking for research, and if so, like, how did that go? Like how many like rejections sort of did you get, or like what percentage were you accepted into?
Yeah, so I was in a kick after my bachelor's of I'll just try to start applying for some jobs and see what happens. And then I was like, well, maybe I should do some internships first. So I applied to a few of them and probably maybe like applied to like 10, let's say. Didn't hear back from all of them but SULI, but I was kind of surprised that I did hear back from SULI, because I didn't know what SULI was really about beforehand. But not too many.
In my case, it's a really competitive scene. I think that there were some, once I decided to accept my offer to SULI, I withdrew from a bunch. But in terms of the ones that I heard back from, I think that most of them were rejections. Yeah.
Everyone told me to apply for many things, but in my infinite wisdom, I still only applied for one. But yeah, do as they say, not as I say.
Yeah, I'm the same as him. I only applied to SULI. So, but do not do that. Yeah, you should apply for more.
Yeah, but we were lucky.
Yeah.
So like, what was the day-to-day life like doing that sort of stuff? Like, good, bad, ugly?
It's a very funny question because it's extremely variable with what profession you do. So I came in with, basically my entire job is computation essentially. So I came in at 9, sat at my desk till 5, and I left at 5. But some of my friends who were experimental did, fully came in and started using like wrenches and stuff like that all day long. So it's a very, very big divide about what happens. But after like the 5 p.m., a lot of people just like leave, but since we were on campus, I made friends that we started walking around campus and stuff like that. So it's a very, very variable day-to-day life of what you do. Some people are fully in wet labs all day long working on stuff. Some people are in glove boxes. Some people are in beam lines. Like it's very, very variable.
I agree. Yeah, I agree that they can't really. In my case, I was also computation. I would come in, sit in front of my computer, run some simulations, then make some plots, and then leave for most of the program. But yeah, there was someone I know whose job mainly revolved around assembling detector components. Someone else who gave a presentation about how she worked on either testing out or modeling 2 specific circuits. So it could look like a wide variety of things. There's one thing that I actually was meaning to bring up. Earlier, I think the professors mentioned that one of the professors mentioned that like the shuttle bus was shut down between Stony Brook and Brookhaven National Lab. I took it twice to get to and from here. So I don't think that's true. Even now I think that it's still running. If you show them your student ID and say that you're going to a Brookhaven National Lab, then they'll just take you in, no questions asked. And so Brookhaven Lab, it is
No questions at all.
Only a few questions. Brookhaven National Lab. It's certainly, it's not like, I mean, it's still in, the middle of suburbia, but it's not like the middle of nowhere by any means.
Feels it.
Yeah, my internships were online, so I would get like an hour with my advisor every day, and then my bedroom. They did try very hard to have occasional online get-togethers, but I think we all know how those work.
One last question, so yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up, so. No, yeah, go.
Okay. I know like for summer internship, they might require a certain GPA. So does it matter that you must have a GPA, let's say 3.9 out of 4, or is okay if you just meet their minimum GPA requirement?
Our GPA cutoff is 2.95. It's
It
some,
is something like that, yeah.
it's something like 2.95-ish.
I think he's asking if it's like, do you need to meet the minimum?
I can't really answer that question. I don't take applications.
It's a very much a holistic process. So if you have, let's say, a 3.0 average, you better pick up that slack in other categories instead. Then you might say, I have a lot of programming skills, or I have like previous research experience or something else. So like the high GPA just means that you're up to the bar of the classwork and the skills and everything else, but lower GPA doesn't exclude you from those things. It just means that you have to, you might have to work a little bit harder in your application.
So you like add some more programming skills stuff.
Yeah, you basically have to like kind of like fluff it up in other areas. So if you have to get more programming skills, get more programming skills, stuff like that.
And of course, it comes down to the individual. Like, it's the scientist who picks you out, so that they like your resume. And so to a certain amount, I think it comes down to what like they judge is most important. And that's something that I don't think that anyone can really predict.
Yeah, like let's say the reason you have like a 3.0 is because you really hate English class. That doesn't really come into play for what their skills that they're looking at. So I don't think it will really impact you in that case.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any more input?
Did you contact any of your advisors before or during when you applied? And if you did, like, how did that go? You know, were you able to like develop a relationship before your research?
So my advisor reached out to me first, but then before the internship started, I said, basically, is there any papers I can read, or is there anything I can do to catch up on this topic? Because I don't really know a lot about it, just to get up to a little bit of speed. But that is not necessary. That was just me personally, because I had anxiety about not knowing how to do the project. But yeah.
In my case, I didn't reach out before applying, but after I accepted my offer, I reached out to my advisor. We were able to set up a Zoom meeting in the middle of the semester, so that I knew what I was working on. And a few months after that, we set up another Zoom meeting, just before I started, and before we met in person.
Thank you for, oh, sorry, you go.
I also didn't reach out to anyone before my application. When my application was still in the pool, I had gotten a phone call from someone who didn't end up being my advisor. He wanted to know if I knew how to use AutoCAD. But I didn't recognize the number, and I was getting a lot of scam calls. So when I picked it up, I was really rude, like, who is this? I work at Brookhaven Lab, I want to know if you know AutoCAD. It was pretty funny, or at least in hindsight it was funny.
I didn't contact my advisor. I just had an interview thing where they told me about the project after I was pretty much done. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much for all of your responses.
Yeah, thanks to the speakers for graciously providing time to talk to everyone about this. And I'd just like to remind everyone who attended one more time.
If you didn't sign in, please sign in. We need to count